The Fantasia, Italian, Fantasie, also English, fantasy, fancy, fantasie, fantasy, German, fantasy, fantasie, French, fantaisie, is a musical composition with its roots in the art of improvisation. Because of this, like the impromptu, it seldom approximates the textbook rules of any strict musical form. History. The term was first applied to music during the 16th century, at first to refer to the imaginative musical idea, rather than to a particular compositional genre. Its earliest use as a title was in German keyboard manuscripts from before 1520, and by 1536 is found in printed tablaches from Spain, Italy, Germany, and France. From the outset, the Fantasia had the sense of the play of imaginative invention, particularly in Ludovico composers such as Francesco Canova da Milano and Luis de Milan. Its form and style consequently ranges from the freely improvisatory to the strictly contrapuntal, and also encompasses more or less standard sectional forms. Field 2001. Renaissance and Baroque. According to the Oxford Dictionary of Music, in the 16th century the instrumental fantasia was a strict imitation of the vocal motet. Kennedy 2006. The English composers William Byrd and John Jenkins both wrote and developed fantasias for viol consort, while Henry Purcell's fantasias are the last 17th century examples of the genre. From the Baroque period, J.S. Bach's Chromatic Fantasia and Fugue, BWV 903. For harpsichord, Great Fantasia and Fugue in G minor, BWV 542. For organ, and Fantasia and Fugue in C minor, BWV 537. For organ are examples. Georg Philipp Telemann published 12 fantasias for solo flute in 1733, and 12 fantasias for solo violin and 12 fantasias for viola da gamba solo in 1735. Classical and Romantic. Examples from the classical period are Mozart's Fantasia in D minor, K. 397 for fortepiano, and his Fantasia in C minor, K. 475. Franz Schubert composed the Fantasie in C major, nicknamed the Wanderer Fantasie for solo piano, and the Fantasia in F minor for piano 4 hands. 3 works by Chopin belong in the genre. The Fantasie in F minor, Op. 49. The Polonaise Fantasie in A flat major, Op. 61. And the Fantasie Impromptu in C sharp minor, Op. Post. 66. Later examples of fantasias include Anton Bruckner's Fantasia in G major, WAB 118. Busoni's Fantasia contrapuntistica, Vaughan Williams' Fantasia on a theme by Thomas Tallis, and Corigliano's Fantasia on an ostinato. 20th century. Walter Wilson Cobbett, in the opening decades of the 20th century, attempted to revive the Fantasia style via a competition, to which works like the Fantasy trios and quartets by William Hurlstone, Armstrong Gibbs, John Ireland, Herbert Howells and Frank Bridge owe their existence. Hausen Bashford 2001. As does Benjamin Britten's Fantasie in F minor for string quintet, written in 1932. The year in which he also composed a Fantasy quartet for oboe and strings. Brett, Dr. LaGrove, and Banks 2001. Section 2. According to the musicologist Donald Francis Tovey, the term fantasia would adequately cover all post-classical forms of concerto. Tovey 1956. 18. See also. Canzona, Capriccio, Carole Fantasia, Chromatic Fantasia, Ricerca, Tiento, Voluntary. Sources: Brett, Philip, Jennifer Dr. Judith LaGrove, and Paul Banks. 2001. Britain. Edward. Benjamin. The New Grove Dictionary of Music and Musicians. 2nd edition. Edited by Stanley Sadie and John Tyrrell. London. Macmillan Publishers. Field. Christopher D. S. 2001. Fantasia. The New Grove Dictionary of Music and Musicians. 2nd edition. Edited by Stanley Sadie and John Tyrrell. London. Macmillan Publishers. Howes, Frank, and Christina Bashford. 2001. Cobbett. Walter Wilson. The New Grove Dictionary of Music and Musicians. 2nd edition. Edited by Stanley Sadie and John Tyrrell. London. Macmillan Publishers. Kennedy, Michael. 2006. The Oxford Dictionary of Music. 2nd edition. Revised. Joyce Bourne. Associate Editor. Oxford and New York. Oxford University Press. Tovey. Donald Francis. 1956. The Forms of Music. With an editorial preface by Hubert J. Foss. London. Oxford University Press. Cleveland. World Publishing Co. New York. Meridian Books. ISBN 9780529020857. Further reading. Antcliffe, Herbert. 1920. The Recent Rise of Chamber Music in England. Musical Quarterly 6. No. 1. January. 12–23. Mayer, Ernst Hermann. 1946. English Chamber Music. London. Lawrence and Wishart. Reprinted. New York. Da Capo Press. 1971. ISBN 0-306-70037-9. Reference on the Early English Fantasy. Fantasie. Fantasie. Fantasia.